Thank you so much. That's the point where you say, wow, isn't it? How many CEOs do we have in the room? I'm sure we have quite a number. How many CEOs by show of hand do you have in the room? Please, if you're a CEO, I know it's quite a number registered. I'm sure you're the CEOs and the CEOs to be, and we also CEOs to be. So how many CEOs are in the room? I raised my hand and I'm not one. Those who want to be CEOs, we are also learning, isn't it? It's all about strategic leadership, and we're looking at sustainability, including if you are at the helm. Most of us are at the helm of our departments, others are at the helm of our sections, others are at the helm in churches and mosques and other areas. I'll invite two speakers to join the panelists. And the third speaker we see, Miriam. I'll take her apologies. She couldn't make it back from South Africa in time. So we have Henry Nyang'or, the Director Supply Chain at ATC Africa. Henry Nyang'or, if you're around, please come forward. Karibu sana, let's give a clap to him until he sits down. And we are gender sensitive. So I'll invite the third panelist, who's also a lady I respect so much. And today we are talking blue. She's also from the blue economy sector. And this is the head of procurement and supply chain at Kenya Maritime Authority, Beverly Lundu. Please take the podium. Let's clap for her until she sits down. DG, you are not clapping. We all clap until she sits down. So we say this is experiential learning, adult learning. So we all want to learn from each other. I'll start by asking one question from the discussants, but also invite questions from the house. My first question, and we're talking sustainability this morning, and we've had quite enriching talks from David and Ambassador Nancy Karigithu. So I'll ask the first question and from Henry Nyang'or, and you can also introduce yourself as you give us that. Pressures and public consumer expectations. How can we, or how can companies, agencies, and all of us here prioritize sustainability initiatives? You heard it? How can we, or companies, how can companies prioritize sustainability given the high increasing regulatory pressures?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Maybe a bit about myself. I'm Henry Nyang'or, about 19 years of supply chain practice. I've been a private sector practitioner all through, but quite a strong advocate of bringing in together private and public sector practitioners in one room, because I believe that through that there are lots of learnings that can be cross-shared either way. I have gone through what I call end-to-end supply chain in my career in terms of planning, into sourcing, into logistics, distribution, and warehousing. And it cuts across multiple industries, from FMCG manufacturing, extended BAT, aviation, into Kenya Airways. And 15 years of that career has been in the telecommunication industry. In the telecommunication industry as well, I've done end-to-end, starting with the mobile network operators, Safaricom initially, and then Airtel. I've been with the active infrastructure provider, Ericsson, and currently I work with the passive infrastructure provider, American Tower Corporation, known as ATC, where I head the Africa supply chain operations. But I'm here as a KISM member, having registered in 2002 as a student member then. So I'm here as a member in good and regular standing. Back to the question. When we speak sustainability in supply chain or sustainability across the business, my understanding here is about how do we address today's needs but with a long-term horizon. And this workshop is themed around leadership. And leadership has nothing to do with the titles we hold, even though most, if not all of us in this room, are privileged to hold some influential titles. But leadership is about the impact and the influence that we can be able to provide in the roles that we hold. So in the actions and the decisions that we make every day, how impactful are they for the long-term horizon, hence sustainability? And the question, if I got it right, is how can organizations or agencies prioritize sustainability as an agenda in everyday decisions? I think the starting point here is to create awareness, in my opinion, because we need to have what I would call a behavioral change or a mindset change. If I think about public sector, for example, two things which come to mind that work against sustainability in the public sector. Number one is wastefulness that seems to be part of our culture. And number two is short-sightedness in terms of our planning and execution that seems to be part of our culture. Now, how do we prioritize resetting that culture so that we are able to make sustainable long-term decisions across the supply chain? For me, let's create awareness. And creating awareness is a journey, but that journey has to start somewhere. If some of us, not necessarily all of us in this room, could make it a priority to ask each and every decision that we make, each and every document that we sign, what's the long-term impact of that decision? And is it a positive or a negative impact? For me, that would be a fair starting point towards aligning the prioritization agenda. Thank you.
Well and clearly put on sustainability. I think key learning there, we all need to create this awareness and we all need to commit to making decisions that not only matter today, but matter in the long term. Maybe Ambassador Nancy, on the same issue of sustainability, from a different perspective, your own perspective, how do you think agencies will prioritize sustainability in addition to what Henry has talked about?
Okay. First of all, I want to acknowledge what Henry has said and say that we apply different lenses when it comes to public. Ni mali ya umma, kwa hivyo haina mwenyewe, I don't know. That has been so long, is it ingrained in us? But just to say that we can make a difference. I remember when before I joined public service and then I left, then I came back. And when I left, I was a consultant with different international agencies, the UN included. And the way it used to work is they would send me money if I'm going out, because they would send me out of the country to consult on consultancy missions. So they asked me how much will the ticket cost, business class, and send us a quotation. So I go and inquire from the agencies, from the travel agencies. They give me a quotation for business class. But I'm a Kenyan, isn't it? I look at that ticket and the amount it costs, almost, I mean, I can get a cheaper one, can't I? So I will get the money for, I mean, I will, all they want is for me to arrive. So why can't we apply the same in public service? And that's one of the things, one of the challenges that I had when I came on board. And if any of you met me, I never flew, even as a PS, I never flew business from Nairobi, Mombasa, or whatever, and out. I mean, because it's not my money, why shouldn't I spend it and do more? So it's something that I would advocate. I don't know whether it makes sense. Or even when I was picking my own car, when I became the PS now, and I bought a Toyota Fortuner, because the budget I had, I looked at it and I said, if only the PS, I've only got this budget for my car as the PS, but I've got staff working under me. Will we all use my car? So I got the Toyota Fortuner. It's lower for a PS, but of course I was able to buy 2 more cheaper cars for the staff to run. And I guess that's what you mean. It's doable and we can do it. Then if I may be specific to the maritime sector, let me say that one of the things that is challenging us now, right now, and is going to affect our sustainability, and we need to think about it very quickly, is new regulations coming in. So we need to be very much alive and to put in the structures. Reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, it's hitting us in the way we operate the ports, the way we run our shipping, and therefore this is something that we really must be alive to, and not only put in the regulations but also the structures and the innovative ways in which to do business. Green energy is a reality, or it's soon going to be a reality, LNG, ammonia, whatever. Yet, we are a country that's got so much natural resources and potential for production. So the solar, the wind, those are all things that we need to do. Circular economy, extending equipment longer. If you go to the port, for example, and I'm not castigating like I said, all that equipment is there where we can manage it better by hiring, but not everybody coming in with their own equipment. Reduce, because it's a requirement from the IMO. Then the other thing we need to deal with is getting in more people. The world is moving, and somebody mentioned in the morning about the global, turbulence that we've been experiencing, and of course it has also affected the maritime sector, starting with the COVID, then getting into the geopolitical issues, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. What that has shown us and has brought to reality in the maritime sector is that crewing has to be diverse. There must be diversity in terms of crewing. So, and one of it is inclusivity, including women, but also diversity in the sourcing of labor. And Africa, stop there. How are we going to attract the people, or to set up the structures that are going to ensure that when they are come to recruit from us as Kenyans, we will have the trainees? And I want to challenge or to seek advice from KISM. There was a time when every little boy and their brother and the girls wanted to do procurement. How did you do it? And can we learn from you so that we make sure that the young people now come into the maritime sector? We have an advantage and a disadvantage. Youth bulge, depending on the way you look at it, it's both a strength or a weakness. If you do not give them the means to earn, it's an infringement of their democratic rights, and therefore they will be restless. But if we can harness the potential in them, particularly to bring them into this sector, it will be very good. And those are some of the issues that I would want to bring on board. Catch them younger and interest them. And the last one, do procurement people have money? Other than buying the shoes, the ostentatious living and building hotels for homes. Please invest in the capacity building for the sector, training. We need schools like yesterday, and we can't produce the capacity we need unless the private sector comes in. Please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador. I want to ask a question to the audience, and if they cannot answer, or if I get one to give a comment. I will also request the DGPPRA to give a comment on this. We are discussing sustainability, and I know, I would say majority of the people here are from public sector. How do we make, how many of us are listening and wondering now, this standard tender document with evaluation criteria, where does green energy come in? Where does this sustainability topic come in? Before DG answers, maybe anyone would give a comment on this? Where do we come in the current setup, especially for those in the sector, in matters sustainability? How do we make decisions that impact the future? Any comment from the audience? Let's make this a bit interactive. We said it's not a one way. Anyone can, yes, Dr. Ongisa? Any other would want to give a comment? Just raise your hand so that we know. Is everyone very dark or I'm not seeing hands? Anyone would want to give a comment on sustainability, or we are here to learn? Okay, let's get Dr. Ongisa.
Thank you very much, CM. Mine is also a question that DG and Henry, my friend Henry, will also attempt to answer in terms of, because we are talking about strategic impact of procurement in stabilizing supply chain management. I'm wondering how can we do more to promote procurement of innovation solutions so that we can also promote small and medium enterprises. The debates we've been having as we revise our curriculum is the issue of climate smart procurement and promotion of public procurement of innovation solutions. And we've noticed from statistics that the uptake of innovation solutions in Kenya is very low compared to developed countries. So that is probably another discussion we can pursue as we talk about sustainability. How do we promote procurement of innovative solutions as we promote small and medium enterprises in Kenya? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a question addressed to Ambassador.
Anyone can answer, but I know DG will be giving more comments to that as Senior Nyang'o. Thank you.
Thank you. DG, comment on sustainability and our processes in public sector.
Chairman has told me to attempt to be tall. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Sustainable public procurement, or let's call it sustainable procurement. It takes very many phases. First and foremost, when we talk about sustainable in the public realm, you all appreciate that we have depended largely on foreign suppliers. And if you looking at foreign suppliers is whereby we are always importing goods largely. But if you look at the public procurement law, one of the requirements is it provides that at least if in case of foreign international suppliers, 40% must be local content. That's one. The second area comes to with respect to the APO group, which we provide that you require to procure 30% of your budget from these disadvantaged groups. Further, you are all aware about, for those who are in the public space, community procurement as a procedure whereby you buy from the community. And when you look at those aspects, they all talk to the issue of sustainable public procurement with respect to supplying in the government. It's unfortunate that as much as we may say sustainable procurement, most of those processes are only for purposes of tendering. You'll find that for steel, we'll buy Doshi, after all, ni Shuma ya Nguvu, and I'm not advertising them. But what turns out, you'll buy cement from Baburi Cement. What turns out is that steel is imported, that cement is imported, and I have challenged everyone who has had an opportunity to listen to me. How does that cement come to Kenya, ends up in a project which is being done by a foreign company, denies our people, local engineers, work at Baburi, at Portland, at Savannah, at Simba Cement, while we are exporting those jobs. That is the aspect of sustainable procurement. Unfortunately, is for purposes of paper. As a regulator, we enforce that because you supply information saying 40% will be bought from cement locally, steel locally, but what ends up being supplied is imported. That is with respect to the 40%. For the ACPO group, is a way of developing sustainability of procurement in the supply chain. Well, it was well intended, but we all know how ACPO has been abused, isn't it? The business of ACPO, where it was intended to benefit those women, to benefit those young people, and the youth, what is happening at the moment, and you all appreciate, and it is one of the concerns, I hope I will be addressing it this afternoon. Those procurements are known who will be getting them, isn't it? One of the speakers said here, somebody is supplying, and I'm sure David is supplying tires. In the evening, he's supplying photocopying paper. The following day, he is doing the roads. Same business, or related. There is no sustainable procurement there. There is sustainable corruption. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, DG. I know we can be here and listen to sustainability, and I thank you, DG, for answering it very well. I want all of us to be in agreement that we need to enhance sustainability of not only the procurement process, but also the end product of what we are buying. And that's what DG is speaking to. That we don't just tick boxes that we've given business to the youth, but the intended purpose and objective is achieved. My next question goes to Beverly. Now, as head of procurement, and of course in your journey, and you'll start by introducing yourself, what are some of the common pitfalls businesses encounter when trying to implement sustainable supply chain initiatives? Some of the pitfalls businesses encounter when trying to implement sustainable supply chain initiatives.
Thank you, CS Jennifer, for that. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beverly Lundu, the head of procurement at Kenya Maritime Authority. I have over 15 years experience in procurement, public sector, and 10 of which are in senior management. Happy and glad to be here. And fortunately also, I've been able to be in a sector that is end-to-end in terms of supply chain, experience in warehousing and logistics, procurement, and supply chain in totality. Back to the question, some of the pitfalls that we've experienced when trying to implement sustainable supply chain is the lack of involvement of stakeholders, specifically these are suppliers. We enter into contracts without notifying or having sessions with these contractors or suppliers, informing them of the expectations in terms of implementing the sustainable supply chain. So at the end of it all, we are not able to get what we want, or reaches a time that we will not be able to implement effective sustainable supply chain. A good example is when we're involving projects that the community or stakeholders have involvement or needs to give their opinions and recommendations towards the implementation of projects. For example, when you're doing construction, I think it's important to involve the community before the construction starts. This is can be done through the ECA. This is the Environmental Impact Assessment, where the community is involved. They forward their recommendations and opinions during the design of a project, and then later they will be implemented or incorporated in the tender document or the bill of quantities, which the contractors are supposed to implement. At the end of it all, we'll find that the same will be able to create employment to the community, and at the end of it all, we'll have effective sustainable procurement on the same. Another pitfall is the budget constraints. Recently, we've seen that most of the organizations have this because of the budget cuts, and thus the projects that we've planned to implement will be somehow affected because of the budget cuts. And this we'll see that at the end of it all, will not be able to effectively implement a sustainable supply chain practice. Another hiccup is the resistance to change. We talked about a lack of awareness or knowledge gap in terms of a sustainable procurement. First, we need to create awareness, but at some point we'll find that employees or stakeholders, respective stakeholders, will not be able to embrace what is ahead of us to be able to have sustainable procurement. And this will hinder the effective implementation of the same in terms of achieving what we would want. So this could be addressed through the capacity building and also sensitization on what sustainable practices are and how we can incorporate the same in our day-to-day operations, and also the contracts that we enter into when we are implementing respective projects. I think CM, those are the ones that I've experienced so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's clap for. I know our energy levels are going down. We're about to close in the next 10 minutes, but I have two questions from the plenary. One directed to KISM and one directed to Ambassador. And then I'll also ask the media to answer one question. Then we'll close in the next 10 minutes. So in a minute, KISM CEO, there's a question. On such a day and age, I'm reading it verbatim. Huh? I do not want to edit because I'm conflicted. On such a day and age of tech, should there be really paper tender document submissions? Thinking sustainability. CEO, and this question, I'm not directing it to director. The person who wrote it directed it to KISM. The reason being, this is public and private sector. Should there be paper tender document submissions? As you decide on how to answer that, to Ambassador, what measures are you able to put in place to sustain and grow the shipbuilding and repair industry, especially noting that most parts are not available locally, which makes speedy repairs impossible? What measures are you able to put in place to sustain and grow the shipbuilding and repair, especially noting that most parts are not available locally, which makes speedy repairs impossible?
ITC Center in Baraki used to do that, meaning there's a lot we have let go, and which, with the proper policies, with the proper incentives, with the proper business environment, we can bring back. It's a question of putting in place the proper policy, and like I said, being integrated in our thinking of what we are trying to do. Because when we tax, I don't want to say tax everything or whatever, but when we put those fiscal policies, are they directed or are they thinking about what we can do locally and the other benefits that can flow from it? For example, even now when we think about the marine steel, for example, is very, very different from what steel we can produce locally. So when we are protecting the steel industry in Kenya, we do not single out or differentiate it from the marine steel that we are doing. So we tax everything. So those are some of the things that I could think about. Then also, when we are, the issue that I raised about the ships coming and doing their repairs here, we need to think about the capacity building, the employment of our youth, so that we cultivate, we calculate that into the ship doing its repair here, then put in the right ecosystem, that when the ship arrives and a spare is arriving in the country to meet with that ship, the processes, the importation processes, insulate the business. So it's a question of coming with the right policies and putting them in place and guarding them, so that when the ship hits JKIA, when the spare hits JKIA, is there an accelerated way of clearing it and sending it to Mombasa, and then it's coming to be fitted in the ship, so no tax. There's a process of, what is it called? No tax. Exemptions. That's what I meant, yeah, exemptions, so that it can come and be fitted. But if the process will take so long and the ship can't keep waiting, then the ship will go to the next destination and we'll find all those processes that were missing here already in place. So incentivizing also is another issue. How do we protect the people who are investing and from whom we are gaining so much more in terms of getting those people employed and bringing in the skills on board? So integrated thinking, not silo mentality.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I'm sure the guy from the media is here, because some of this, you say incentivizing, comes from the media, where you have the Kenyans want to see jobs. But again, the media is sometimes not so positive about investors coming to Kenya. I am not accusing them, I am pointing out something that, and I will give an example. You have said we would produce spares before. We have numerical machining that I'm sure even produces gears for certain sectors of this economy. But you will find you have, I don't want to mention a very controversial story of a Dani group who would want to invest in Kenya. But what does the media do? They will not say the positive story, they will give the negative story. I do not, maybe I'll give you a comment, but before that, let's give Wanjuki. Is it Wanjuki or KISM? DG, yes. Answer the question on why are we having paper tender documents, and an additional question, which was meant for KISM. KISM, you are still not escaping. CEO, you still have to come here. Why can't procurement in private sector be aligned with public procurement, so that they employ, because currently they employ salespeople, HR people for work done by non-professionals. There should be a change in practice of procurement in the whole country. KISM, you'll give us half a minute on that. But Wanjuki, I'm giving you 1 minute to address the issue of tender documents that are paper.
Okay, let me attempt to answer that one on submission. The current procurement legal framework provides for both manual and electronic tender submission. There is e-tender documents provided under the Act. Nothing stops submission of tenders within the current legal framework from manual to electronic. We hope by the coming of EGP that we will not have manual procurement processes with respect to tender submission, tender evaluation, and communication. And CMU confirmed that you are using SAP. You do not have manual system, do you? You don't. And if if in case you are using manual system, I can assure you it's because you are protecting a certain industry. SAP is one of the most robust procurement system to use anywhere in the world when it comes to procurement, e-tendering. And I have done it before. You do not need to use manual system when you are using the EGP, which we hope to have by 1st of January, as already government has pronounced itself. The next question I will attempt to answer is the question about why are we having non-procurement professionals in procurement? Because you have made a choice. You have made a choice simple like this. If you're working in procurement, you are sending somebody to an evaluation committee who has no practicing license, who has no, is not a member of KISM, and you decide to be silent, it is a choice you have made. As an advocate, if I appear in a court in Kenya, and the next person seated to me is my chairman, whom I know he has never been to a law school, I will pronounce myself and tell the judge, Your Honor, we have a stranger in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. DG has put it right. And the last statement is very strong. But then we have made the decision to have non-practitioners, especially for public sector. You have no reason why you should be having non-professionals practicing procurement.
Thank you.
KISM, please.
Thank you.
And I want you to address private sector.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think the gist of it all is talking to the very, very mandate for which we exist as KISM, looking at the legal framework. The architecture of our legal framework provides that we enforce compliance without the public sector or the private sector. And I think you have witnessed in the recent past, we have been very, very clear on our messaging, talking about a unified and integrated approach when it comes to enforcement of compliance. We take note that the private sector should not be left out, and our message to the employers has been that we need to ensure that people who are working in the private sector are also compliant as required by the Suppliers Practitioners Management Act. We have also gone ahead to now curate deliberate programs that are talking to the needs of the private sector, because people want to invest where there is something in return. So if we exist and our approach is only demand driven, and we are not talking about the supply side of capacity building programs, for example, then we are not resonating to the expectations of the private sector. It is on the basis of that we have now embarked on very deliberate interventions to bring the private sector into the fold. But we're also going out to create awareness and also just to talk to employers in the private sector to be able to ensure that the people that they employ are in good standing. Based on the data that we have at the Institute, which stands now at approximately 10,000 members, we have noted that the public-private sector percentages is almost 50-50. So we have to then a bit be more deliberate as we tackle the private sector. So I can only give assurance that moving forward, this is a space that we are going to work on very, very deliberately so that we can be able to enforce compliance. One of the criticisms that I noted one time from one of our members was to say that they're waiting for the day when the CEO will visit, in quotes, one private sector institution and enforce compliance. And we have taken that challenge very positively, and we are working on strategies to ensure that we really enforce the law when it comes to compliance with the requirements of the Suppliers Practitioners Management Act. So for clarity and in conclusion, is to indicate that there is no bias. It is the totality of approach, and the law enforcement architecture requires that we enforce the law for both the private and public sector. I hope that is useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CEO KISM. We summarize in half a minute, every speaker, just one parting shot as we close. But even to address that, because that's part of sustainability, having professionals doing procurement. It's part of making our procurement sustainable, because we have the right decision makers. We as a council actually have made it a very pertinent issue, and the Secretariat is aware. And if you look at the numbers, in the last 1 year, we've grown by more than 3,000 members. That shows how much we're enforcing. I think we deserve a clap as an institute. 2 years ago, we were at 6,000 members. Now we are over 10,000 registered members. And as we grow, KISM is also growing. And we've also issued a circular last week that starting January, for you to be a member of KISM, registered, admitted as a new member, the only qualification is CPSP, Certified Procurement and Supply Chain Professional of Kenya. So you have between now and 31st of December, if you've taken CIPS and other courses, to register as a member. Thereafter, we shall only admit the Kenyan certification, because we also want a sustainable curriculum for our country, a curriculum that's also answering to the needs of Kenyans. And we've come up with a very nice curriculum, and I'm sure the chair of KISM is here and the CEO, and you can get further information from that. So we are really trying to professionalize this area, and I like the way the CEO has put it even for the private sector, and you will be seeing more, although we do not want to be adversarial, because we also want to work with all stakeholders, so there's a buy-in into the profession while still being firm about it. So I'll give the panelists 1 minute for parting shots as we close the session. Thank you. Beverly, your parting shot?
My parting shot with respect to the subject matter, sustainable procurement, I will also urge, you mentioned the issues of tender documents. I will also urge PPRA to consider incorporating or capacity build on how institutions can be able to incorporate the issues of sustainable procurement, yeah? Because we have standard, yes, we have standard tender documents. We are also guided on the same, yeah? But some institutions or individuals do not know how to incorporate issues of sustainable procurement in the tender document. So I don't know if it's an issue of lack of knowledge, or the document has it, it has provisions of the same, or it's just an issue of people being lazy. I don't know. So if it's an issue of knowledge gap, then maybe we could find ways of capacity building or impacting this knowledge to these individuals or institutions on how we can incorporate the same to be able to implement the subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My parting shot is, if you think about this country, we have so much legislation, so much. Matter of fact, we are over-legislated, even as far as procurement processes are concerned. Equally, we are at the top of technology as far as innovation is concerned. Now, this legislation has two parts, the letter and the spirit. And in many cases, we tick boxes and we are right with the letter of these provisions, but we lose the spirit. I think what we require is sincerity to make a difference and make sustainable decisions. Example, let Mishuki brought sanity to the matatu industry. He didn't pass any new legislations. He found what was there. And when he left, we fell back to pre-Mishuki days. When someone was the Minister for Education, Matiang'i, the cartels around exams stealing disappeared somehow. There were no new laws passed. When he left, we fell back. For such a time, history has given us an opportunity as practitioners to shape the current and the future. We can choose to make an impact and make a sustainable legacy, or we could choose to take the country back. My plea as practitioners let's make a difference, a positive, sustainable difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Yes.
Thank you. I will reflect about proactive disclosure of information. There are very clear guidelines about procurement, from advertisements, evaluation, and awarding, and where that information would be. If we faithfully avail that information on the relevant places, the portals and elsewhere, there will be nothing for the media to ask. We simply tell them, check the portal or check out, because it's a requirement. And usually the information people are looking for is when we fail to avail that information accurately where it is supposed to be. So if you do that, then there will be no matter of this misconception and perception that there is some cards under the table. So I think if you proactively do that, then it will be easier for us, and there will be less and less blame game. I usually say that the Kenyans working in public service and the Kenyans working in media, and even the Kenyans working in the police, as I was telling you last weekend, must find a way to work together. They are all Kenyans, and it's for the good of the country. One group trying to blame another, and all that is all useful. They're all Kenyans holding different parts of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Well, mine is to thank KISM for this forum and for having this very honest conversation and bringing everybody, or rather as many varied voices as possible and areas. I think the cross-pollination of knowledge and ideas and also perspectives is very, very important for sustainability going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll give them a clap, and then we'll have a photo with the chair and council.